Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our South Carolina Democratic Women's Zoom. We are here today to discuss. It is Women's Equality Day coming up on August the 26th. We know that this has definitely been, we know that March is Women's History Month, but this has definitely been one for the books for women this August. We have a lot happening this month with the Democratic National Convention starting on Monday and Biden deciding to not run for a second term. Vice President Kamala Harris stepping up to run, and she's received the 99% of delegate votes to become our new nominee. She's appointed a new vice president. School is starting back, and we have tons to discuss. And so we're going to start by introducing our panelists. And we have Ms. McCottry. We also have Representative Heather Bauer. We have Ms. Francie Kleckley, who's running for office this time around as well. And we will have Mayor Teresa Myers Irving popping in a few minutes. So I'm going to let each panelist introduce themselves, and you will be able to hear their wonderful stories about what they've done and what they are currently doing uh, to either on the political scene or just advancing different issues in our community. So, Ms. McCottry, if you'd like to begin.
Well, good evening. Thank you so much. Melissa, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this beautiful panel. These women, you are just beautiful. And so I'm excited about it. I don't know about you all. Before I even talk about me, I've got to talk about what's happening in the world right now. I am excited. Women run the world. You know, those men didn't even understand that, but now it's becoming clear to us, right? And so I'm excited. Again, my name is Tammy McCottry. I am the executive producer and television host of the Tammy TV show. I've been on television for over 26 years. I'm from Charleston, South Carolina, adopted child from birth, and I always tell that story because that's always been so important to me, to let people know where you've been and what you're doing now. I'm also the CEO of Tammy Media Group LLC, as well as a new position, which is a contract for me as the executive leader of Jenkins Youth and Family Village, which is formerly Jenkins Orphanage in Charleston, South Carolina. So I'm just getting off the road, ladies. So if I'm talking fast, I'm talking because I'm still in that mode of moving and shaking. But I have been able to talk with people on my shows, celebrities. I've been able to talk with political figures as well, women in news, women in history. And it gives us an opportunity to tell our stories. And that's what the Tammy TV show has been all about. And in my life, I'm a community person, love the community, love working in the community as a community activist, making sure that we protect our children. We work for women in our community and also the men. We can't forget them as well. But we know, as I said, women run the world. And so again, it is with great honor and pleasure that I join you today. And I look forward to hearing the rest of you and hear your stories. And I could keep on and on and on because, you know, as a television host, you love to talk, you love to meet people, you love to tell, hear different stories. But I look forward to hearing your story and what we're about to do in this nation. So thank you again. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you so much. Representative Heather Bauer.
Well, Tammy, you might have met your match. You're on with politicians, so we like to talk too.
Yeah.
You just got off the road. I just got done knocking doors in my district, so I was like, I'm gonna just get on camera straight off the street from knocking doors. I am Representative Heather Bauer. I represent House District 75, which is Southeast Columbia. It's all in Richland County. My story and my entry into politics was like a lot of folks, in 2016, the unthinkable happened and I got mad. And like a lot of us, we tried to figure out what our place was. And for me, that was going through the Emerge program, which is a program where Democratic women get trained to run for office. So I went through that program and decided to run. Ran in 2020, I lost. Ran in 2021, I lost. Ran again in 2022, told my team, I was like, listen, if I do this, I'm only going to talk about abortion and abortion rights. We had one message and we flipped that district. We were the only Democratic campaign to win a seat in the whole state in 2022. And he is running again, which is why we're out working so hard now. He's mad. He wants a seat back. He says it was a fluke that he lost. I'm like, sir, you're the only Republican to lose in 2022. So I don't think that's right. But I'm really proud to serve on the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee. We do a lot of legislation, obviously around the waterways and our wildlife. So it's a huge honor to serve on that committee. But I will say in my first 2 years, my first term, I'm most proud of what I've been able to bring to the floor, which is just the focus on doing the people's work, fighting for what we believe in, equity, freedom, and progress. I speak without fear or favor. I have enemies on both sides of the aisle, so I think I'm doing something right. I think we need more people who serve and lead without the worry of getting reelected, and that's how I've served my first 2 years. Been a huge honor. Last year, I led our filibuster in the House by filing close to 1,000 amendments to fight for every right of abortion access and healthcare access last year. Even though that ban passed, the work's not done. And local seats are so important. I know we're going to get into it, Melissa, but we got to focus on local seats. They're so important. But so proud to be here with y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. You're right. And this is what the initial reason for the Zoom, and we were going to, leading up to the election, try to do just a few more, but we wanted to highlight our South Carolina issues. And, you know, it's kind of hot right now with everything going on. I did a rally down in Charleston. Liz is on. Liz did, they had their Georgetown Democratic Party gala yesterday, and we want to. I don't want to. I'm gonna let Francis. I'm gonna let Francis go. But I don't, because I don't want to start. I don't want to start. But it is, South Carolina's got to be ground zero because we have a lot going on in South Carolina. But Francis, go ahead, because we're gonna.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Melissa, for hosting this event. I am Francie Kleckley. I am running for Senate District 10, which is all of Greenwood County and portions of Saluda and Lexington County. I'm a born and raised South Carolinian, born in Bennettsville, South Carolina, where I lived my entire childhood in a house that my dad built, and watched my father work a full-time job and owned 3 or 4 coin-op laundromats and a vending business. And my mom kept the books and ran a yarn shop out of our house. And they really wanted nothing more than for me to be the first in the generation to have a college education. And they worked hard and sent me to college. And I landed out of college a good federal job, Internal Revenue Service. I was a good guy, though. I'll tell you a little bit about that. Not an auditor, but I served as your taxpayer advocate for South Carolina. I helped businesses and individuals get in compliance with tax laws. I led an organization that protected taxpayer rights and proposed legislation to minimize undue taxpayer burden. I was the executive co-lead that tackled the tax-related identity theft problem. And I retired in 2019 as your director of privacy for the nation for IRS. I was an executive there, and I don't tell you all of these things to talk about my checkered work history, but 36 and a half years, and I really thought I was done. I could, although I've lived my entire adult life in Lexington, South Carolina, I spent way too much time in DC dealing with Congress at the national level. And so have been a lifelong civil servant, never a career politician, but I come back home and I'm enjoying retirement. I try to give back to the community. I serve on some nonprofit boards and take care of friends and family and contribute in all the ways. And I would go down to the State House and I'd wave my placard and I'd call my congressman and write my congressman, but nothing ever really moved the needle for them. And so I thought, what is it that I can really do to help my state move ourselves from a just barely surviving mode to a thriving mode? And I realized that because of my, federal executive career, I did have the knowledge, skills, and ability to do something different. And so I put down my tennis racket and I said, well, I'm going to get in the race, because clearly my opponent and many of his good old boys, Billy Garrett is my opponent, were just making laws that take away our personal freedoms and roll back the progress we have made on human rights. And so I think we'll get into many of the issues that brought me to this point, but the true catalyst was the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and watching what the men in our Senate did and our state house to then put in, a near total abortion ban. And so, in the words of Barbara Jordan, the late Congresswoman, democracy, there's too much at stake for democracy to be a spectator sport. So I'm off the bench and I'm in the game. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Francie. Now, I'm going to go in reverse order this time, and I'm going to start with you. Let me ask you a question. And I'm going to start with local issues. I'm going to reverse the order because you guys kind of hit there first, and I do think it's important. And I want you to kind of highlight some of the things happening in South Carolina right now. We are doing some not so nice things. Some of our legislation that has come out, I think, has just been really mean-spirited. I'm a teacher here in South Carolina, and I know Heather and Francie, you work a lot with young people or have experience with young people. And Tammy, I know through your TV show and radio show that you've had experience with young people. And I don't feel like they understand really why this is important. So from a local level, I want you guys to talk about why this election in 2024 and why it is necessary to go out and vote. Like I said, we're going to go in reverse order this time. We're going to start with you, Francie.
Okay, so, like Heather said, she was out door knocking today. During the primary, I knocked over 1,000 doors. And what I found behind those doors were people who were afraid to say anything above a whisper about their Democratic leanings and how they truly felt about Donald Trump and their fear for their neighbors. My observation generally is that the parties have become way too polarized, and the ultra conservatives, the extremists, are the ones leading the legislation. They have the trifecta, the Republican governor, the supermajority in the House, and almost a supermajority in the Senate. And so they don't have to consider expert testimony, and they don't have to consider the opinions of the Democratic leaders, to the point that the Republicans ran off 3 women senators, very well qualified folks who were trying to stand up for women's rights. It feels to me that women are being treated as second-class citizens in this state. And that, I know that I am preaching to the choir, but that is so important that we, the women of this state who are running, model this behavior for the young women and show them how important it is, and what voting locally, whether it's a school board who Moms for Liberty are trying to take over, or a city or a county seat. This seemed to be, based on my observation, an egregious characterization of how the path our state is on. And so I just try to emphasize, particularly to the young people who feel like their vote doesn't count, that it is the collective power of the vote. You have to vote your values. And I think one of the things we're seeing is the civics courses are not being taught in our public schools. But, you know, I could go on about the lack of proper funding for our public schools. And I just continue to hammer that message that, you know, you do have a voice and it's a collective voice, and you must register to vote, and you've got to get out there and giving them the specific things that are being pieces of legislation that are being enacted that are not in their best interest. So.
Thank you, Francie. Representative Bauer. I'm
You
gonna
can call me
call.
Heather. It's fine.
Okay,
It's fine.
because I'm trying to be.
Okay.
So,
We go way
so-
back, Melissa. It's fine. I would say very simply, it's really important to go vote because it can get worse in South Carolina. In 2022, we lost 5 House seats. We currently have, just from the primary in the Senate, 2 women. It can get worse. So we need to protect seats like mine. I live in a very competitive district. We need to protect people like Representative Spencer Wetmore in Charleston, and maybe a couple other, but really there's only about 4 or 5 competitive state house races in the entire state. That's a whole other issue to discuss the gerrymandering that we have in our state. But it can get worse. So that is what I think of most when I think of, you know, my reelection and what other seats I see at stake. I'd also like to hit on something about the men making these decisions for us women. The women in the House vote along with them. The Senate women, regardless if they're independent, Republican, Democrat, stood together. In the House, that was not the case. It was it was completely partisan. So not all women are made equally. I just want to say that. And there are no moderate Republicans in our state house. They all vote for the abortion ban. They all vote for constitutional carry. And the one Republican who voted against the abortion ban, he's gone. He lost his primary. So that tells you the climate of where we are. It is so important to show up and protect these seats, regardless if it's school board up to president.
Thank you, Heather. Ms. McCottry, from your experience, and you have an eye on the ground. I mean, you're on TV, you're on the radio, you're everywhere. You're now over one of my favorite projects, formerly Jenkins Orphanage, which is another whole conversation and folks trying to steal that piece of property. So there's a lot going on there. But how do we let these people know who are not typically engaged? How do we engage them?
So I agree with and please call me Tammy and Mrs. Kleckley and Ms. Heather. I agree with what they both said. I look at it as, because I used to get out and I helped run a campaign many years ago, and she was the only woman who was not known to win this countywide school board seat. That was Toya Hampton Green at the time. And so I look at grassroots. When you ladies talk about being out there and knocking those doors, that's what it takes. But our young people right now, they need the message to hear why it's important for them to vote. I mean, and thinking about South Carolina with the men and everything, it's a dictatorship. These men are trying to tell us how to use our bodies, what we can do with our bodies. And I agree with you, Heather. It's partisan. They vote whether it's that everybody's going to vote the same way. And that's not the way it should be. But when you ask me that question, the more I think about it, we've got to reach these young people by having the message, because they're not listening. They're not hearing it. They've got to get excited about people. They've got to get excited about the message. And we have to do a lot of social media. As you know, that's the way of the world. Texting, IG, TikTok, whatever it takes. Being in media, That's what it's going to take to really get these people and these young people excited. And as you said, we've got to protect these seats. I was listening to everything that you all were saying about the collective voice. If they hear that in the household, then they're going to pay attention to it. So it's important for us to not only reach young people, but also reach their parents, their grandparents, so that they can keep hammering that. Now, we can't talk at them. We've got to talk to young people. You know, I have a daughter. She's turning 30 August the 31st. And the one thing that she said to me was, you know, Mama, I definitely don't like that orange-haired man. She said, but you know, I'm looking at President Biden, and she said, Mama, he's older. What's going to happen? I said, what's the best of both? What's the best of the two evils? You know, and I'm not saying that Joe Biden is evil by no means, please. So I know we're recording, but I'm just saying, what is it that you're looking at? If you have a comparison to all that President Biden has done and what that other orange-haired man has done, what is it that you see? And so we had this long conversation. And of course, you know, she's like, well, of course, it's not going to be the orange-haired man. She said, but I understand what you're saying. In order to keep the orange-haired man out, and I'm saying it nicely, y'all, in order to keep the orange-haired man out, because we're being recorded, we've got to go with President Biden. I said, correct. But when the shift came, she got so excited. Because, you know, I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. So the Divine Nine, of course, okay? And so when that happened, and plus I'm a Bison too, I'm a Howard grad.
Oh.
So when that happened, she was like, wow. And now you're listening to the message. And I think in South Carolina, we have to find the right people like you, Francis, like you, Heather, that are getting out there and spinning that message and letting these young people know, hey, you've got to do it because it's going to get worse, as you talk about, Heather, before it's going to get better. And so I hope I answered your question. I think it's grassroots. You got to talk to them one-on-one. You have to have forums like this. And Melissa, I'm so glad that you're doing this. And I'm glad that you invited me to be a part of it. We've got to reach them. And the only way we can reach them is hitting that TikTok. And if we got to dance for a minute or whatever and say, this is South Carolina, girl. Miss Francis, you get out there and you do your thing. And this is what
I don't think you want to see that.
But listen to the message. Listen to the issues that are at hand, that affect their communities, that affect them personally. And that's how I think we can reach them.
Okay. Thank you so much. Heather, we're going to go with you this time. And I want to I want to talk about the last election. We don't really want to talk about it too much, but I want to talk about 2022. I don't want to talk about you were elected in 2022. We lost a lot in 2022. We lost, and of the losses we had in 2022, most of those were female. In 2024, in the primary, this primary season, we had more women run. We had more people run for office than ever before. We had more women on the ballot than ever before. Leading up to this primary, we had before the elections prior to this primary, the special elections, women won. Tiffany Spanwalder won her election, special election. Senator Tamika Isaac Devine won her special election. So it was looking good. And then we got to the primary and we saw a dip. In 2024, we saw an attack on women. I'm going to call it attack, but we lost a lot of women in the House. And then we came up to this primary. And the sister senators, ground zero, we lost them all in the primary. So I want you to just discuss that for a minute and the ramifications of these elections and what's happened at the state level and why it matters. And then Francie, we'll go to you, and then we'll come back to you, Tammy.
So I think we reached kind of a tipping point that really put a spotlight on the values and the mean-spiritedness of the men in the Senate. So these are women who stood up for women's issues, women's rights, personal freedoms, choice. And there was a lot of money poured in to the opposition, where what we saw is, I know firsthand about slash tires and calls to the SPCA and baby killer pieces of paper that were left on windshields of cars. There was a lot of money devoted to that. And so in my mind, that is not democracy. That is hate and vitriol. And I believe that, that is where our state is going unless we can get that turned around. And again, I think there are folks who have moderate views, and we're all about within the 70%. But what is leading our state are the ultra conservatives and the extremists, whose views, simply put, are if you are not a straight white man, then you need to be put in a different level in society, because you are a second-class citizen and your values and your opinions and decisions are not as important as theirs.
Thank you so much, Heather.
Yeah, I'll add to that, take it a step further. The extremists for sure lead the House. But what I've seen is that, the moderates, so-called moderates, they could have stopped all of this from happening in our House. They could have stopped that if they truly did not believe in constitutional carry, in basically a full abortion ban, you name it, vouchers, go through the list. They have the numbers to do whatever they wanted, and we would have stood with them as a Democratic caucus to vote against those things, but they chose not to. Because they were personally threatened. To Francie's point, they were threatened in these primaries. So the moderate Republicans raised a ton of money to try to beat these Freedom Caucus folks, MAGA people, and lost every single race. So, and why I kept saying, it could get worse, is because the primary showed that. I mean, they didn't win a single race. But what I see, I sit in that state house on the floor and listen to my colleagues talk, and they're pushing their beliefs and their morals onto people, their religion onto people. And that is not a democracy. And in our state house, there's no such thing as separation of church and state. I mean, there's also not, and they push those upon people too. I get more preaching at the state house than I do at church. So there's very little separation. And, I walk in there, I think they think of me as like an unholy woman. When I walk in there, I'm I have a boyfriend, and, I'm not married with 10 kids. Like, I feel like I'm unholy to them. Which makes me want to wear my skirt a little shorter just to piss them off. But, that's me.
I love you, sir. I love you so much.
Hey, and we have, other Freedom Caucus person in the news just last week being accused of child porn. I mean, and this is the former leader of the Freedom Caucus in our state. Like, these are the people leading this movement, and they are not good people. They're not in it for the right reasons.
And Miss McCottry. Tammy. Hey, ladies, as you all are sitting here talking about this, the one word that comes to my mind is power. These men want the power. They know that right now they feel that they have the power. A lot of hatred, a lot of, going back to second-class citizen, Ms. Francis, as you said, we're going back, before women had the right to vote. That's where they want to take us. And I think it's imperative for us, and you all probably know my late brother, David Mack, South Carolina State Representative David Mack. You know, I've known he took care of me from a little girl all the way. That was something that he and my father and made sure of. And one thing that he used to say, there in this state, there's not equality for people. There is no equality when you look at it. There's no equality for women. There's no equality for our children. What are they thinking about? And so the one word that I say, it's greed and it's power. It's hatred. And being an African American woman, we have known this for years and years and years. There's that hatred there. They don't want to see. They don't want to see a white woman. They don't want to see a black woman. They don't want to see an Asian woman. They don't want to see any nationality, any other kind of woman. They don't want to see a woman at all. They want to tell us what we are supposed to do. And I think now it's time for us to stand up. This is the time right now. We're seeing it. And we're going to see that what's going to happen in Chicago. Electrifying. This is how we've got to get people out and get people to vote. So I hope I did answer the question. I'm saying power.
So do you think we should, how do we get our power back, Tammy? Because this is what's come out of this. I just want to talk, this will be probably the last thing we do. I wouldn't say the last thing, but I just want to talk about what's come out of the State House for a minute. We've had vouchers for private school. We've had transgender bills. And the transgender bill says if a child has a conversation with a school official, and Heather, you know, this is your baby, or your issues, and they say, I feel like I want to change my gender, or I want to be identified by something other than how I was born, then myself or a school official, anybody in the building, the custodian, the lunch lady, anybody who hears that conversation must get on the phone and call the parent immediately and contact, and the principal has protocol to go through. Then we have other provisos that are tied for money. It feels like an attack to me, just those things, on public education. We have book bans where now we have to scan every book in the building, every book, whether it is read or not, if it's offered or not, in the library or not. And it has to be put on the website so parents can view it. We have just so many different things. We have um, parents who can peruse lesson plans, which I've been teaching 24 years. The lesson plans change daily. Because kids change and things change. We have um, attacks on women and women rights and fetal heart bills, and we're considering IVF, banning IVF, and all of these things. It's prohibition instead of freedom, and yet they call themselves the Freedom Caucus. But you know what we haven't had? We haven't had anything to do with building more hospitals in rural communities. We haven't had bills out there to fix our flooding issue in South Carolina. When it rains, the whole state now floods. It used to be localized. Now it's no longer localized. We hadn't had anything to deal with the housing crisis in South Carolina, but we've done everything else. And so, Tammy, I'm going to ask you, how do we get our power back? And then Heather, I want you to speak on this house that you work in, and in the next legislative session, how we can move it forward.
So, in order for us to get our power back, and I've just been thinking about this, we've got to mobilize. We've really got to mobilize our communities. We've got to mobilize our women more so than anything else. This is a time for us to stand up and say no more. We're not going to take this anymore. Shirley Chisholm said it best. You don't make progress by standing on the sidelines, whimpering and complaining. You make progress by implementing ideas. And now it's time for those ideas to come to fruition. It's time for us to stand up, take the power back, let these men know, and don't be afraid. I wrote that down. I said, we can't be afraid. We can't be fearful. Fear it should not be in our DNA at this time. We've got to make a stand and say, you know what? I'm taking it back. That's just like an abused woman saying no more. No more. That's it. I'm done. I am done. I'm not going to have it anymore. I'm leaving. I'm walking out. I'm taking my power back. I'm taking it back so that you don't no longer have power over me. And in order for us to do that, we have to come together collectively. And that's why I love that word, Francis. That's one of my favorite words, Miss Francis. Collectively, we've got to come together collectively and say we're taking it back.
Thank you. Heather, you want to talk about any of the crazy stuff I left off that happened in the last
Let's talk
legislative
about
session?
yeah, let's talk about guns.
Oh
Just
yeah, I forgot gun.
Just
Yes.
this weekend in Myrtle Beach, there's a store. This guy walks in with it AR-15 strapped to his shoulder. Owner of the shop asked them to leave. There's a family member emailed the state house, my mailbox. She was vacationing with her family. They're in the store. Guys in there with an AR-15. The store owner is like, "Can you, politely leave?" Like, how do you address someone with an AR-15 strapped to their shoulder? The guy becomes ornery. They call the cops. The cops show up, and he eventually, left the store. But like my Sheriff Lott says here, it's like the Wild Wild West. His greatest fear is coming true. We don't know who's a good guy. We don't know who's a bad guy. And yes, carrying an AR-15 is on your shoulder is not legal at all. But now there's this air of just this right to do whatever they want to do. And it's posturing and threatening and extremely dangerous. And so the passing of the constitutional carry, I go to all my neighborhood meetings in my district, and we have updates from community officers, and they're like, we're just waiting for the worst to happen. There was the St. Pat's Day parade the week after it passed. Talking to the sheriff there, he's like, we're just praying to God nothing happens. We're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Sadly. So that was the one big thing I did want to bring up. And then the vouchers, of course, too. It's such a facade to funnel money to rich people, because if you're sending your kid to a private school, that $3,000 that's a drop in the bucket. That's not gonna, if you're not even in the game to send your kids to private school, that's not gonna help you at all. Mm-hmm. So clearly, we see this very clearly what it's meant for. And this past session, before they even finished the pilot of this voucher program, they passed they passed even more to it. So it's just a complete egregious when it comes to kids and women, just complete. We're losing our freedom. We've lost our freedom. We've lost our privacy. I mean, when I go into the state house, I literally think about my colleagues like in my bedroom or in my doctor's offices. Like that's where they are. They're making these decisions for us and passing these laws.
I find it interesting that we can have open carry, but we can't have open carry at the state house.
Oh, please. I mentioned that. I was like, oh man, I want to carry my gun in here. Because I have my concealed weapons permit, and I'm like, I want to carry my gun. Like, oh no. We tried to pass that amendment during the, and I've come like, what? We were like literally on the floor, kind of like mocking them, because we're like, you're such a hypocrite,
Francis, your take on all things South Carolina legislature.
So, so y'all have hit, kind of the big areas. I will tap into my inner IRS self. When we talk about our money, we pay taxes on Medicaid, but yet we're one of 10 states who turn away money that we have paid taxes on, and we leave 345,000 South Carolinians, 82,000 of which are children. I mean, come on, people. Children can't take care of themselves. That is part of our role in South Carolina, is to raise children, give them a good education. But yet we've already paid taxes on that money, and it can now be used by other states. Now, that is a bad use of our tax dollars. And a 10-year price tag on that is $28 billion. Imagine the education system and the healthcare system we could have for $28 billion. The The other kind of, money issue for me is the $1.8 billion that magically appeared, that no one had accounted for. No one knew where it came from or what it was supposed to be used for. And so now you've taken and allocated $5 million out of our precious state tax budget for private accountants to be paid to find out something that our state government should have known all along. We could do a lot with that $5 million. So it is the social issues that really, are gnawing at me. But, as someone who has done, as someone who's actually done work at the federal level, when I look at our tax system and our tax structure and what we're doing with our money, I'm very unhappy about the leadership that is exercised around that as well.
Thank you. Okay, so this is South Carolina. Uh, welcome to South Carolina. And we have so much work, so many things that we need to do here in our state. But I do want to take a few minutes at least to talk about our national issues and why it matters. Coming out of in June, we had one nominee, and now we have another one, and we're going into the Democratic convention next week. And I just kind of want to talk about each of you, and Francis, you can start, and then we'll go to Tammy. But I kind of just want to hear your thoughts about the national races right now, your process. How do you think this will play? I've talked to a lot of people, and when we decided to do the Zoom call, I just want to put it out. We decided this early summer before any of this happened, and now I think we're all on a Zoom call every night somewhere. But I just want to have a conversation about it. I'm not. You get 2 minutes to just kind of talk about what you think about the national and what has transpired. I'll give my take on it.
So I will tell you that I am ecstatic at the fact that Kamala is at the top of the ticket. We are way overdue for a female president, much less a woman of color. And I'm thrilled with Walz. The more I listen to him, the more I just love him. And I think they will make a fabulous leadership team in the White House. My concern, and I've talked about this to Democrats, is when Barack Obama was elected, I was thrilled. I thought, okay, finally, the racism, all the hate, we can pull together as a country. But what I saw was just the opposite. It took racism to a new level. I remember taking my niece to his inauguration, and I was so proud because she brought her best friend, who was a young girl of color. I mean, I felt like this was just such a fabulous step forward for the country. But little did I know, I was wrong. It was a step backwards. I am fearful of what will happen after the election. Either way it goes, I am fearful about what actions the haters in our country, a lot of which live in South Carolina, what actions they will take. But I'm going to be hopeful because I know that Kamala will be a fabulous president. Okay.
Thank you, Francie. Tammy.
Well, I already said now I'm a bison. I'm an AKA. All right. So you already know how I feel, right? But let me just say this. When Kamala decided, when they decided that it was time that she was going to be the person who would be there, I said, boy, now we can say Madam President. I am hopeful. I'm excited. I love Walz. I mean, his story alone just touched me because he touches all the areas. And when we say breakdown and we say power, now there are people who can identify with him who may not identify with Kamala, but that brings us, it's like walking across that aisle, walking on the other side. And I see him bringing those votes as well. I believe we're going to win. I mean, I know we're going to win. I just know it in my heart. It's time. It's time for us, and it's time for those haters, Francis, to recognize that we're taking our power back. And I think this is the time to take that power back. And I think these young people, when they see her, when they hear Waltz talking, especially being an educator, when you hear him, the man, I'm like, he's my next door neighbor. Come on. He's my next door neighbor. And when I see that, and you feel that excitement, oh man, it's on and popping. Listen, that orange-haired man, as my daughter would say, she's an AK, by the way, too. That orange-haired man, bye-bye. Like they say, you the weakest link, bye-bye. So I'm excited about it. And I think with all of the issues that are coming up, they're going to be able to address those. And I know what you're saying, Ms. Francis, when that happened with Barack and some of the issues, they had to do that partisan thing again. There's that partisan thing. But I think on this time, I think we're going to see a big change. We're going to see a lot of things being reversed. And that's why, Heather, when you talk about the local elections, Melissa, when you all talk about the local elections, I want people to understand that it starts down here. It doesn't start up there. It starts.
I agree.
I'm gonna stop talking because I can keep talking, so I'm gonna stop.
No, I totally agree.
You said 2 minutes. It's Heather's turn.
It's all good stuff. This is such great stuff. I remember I was sitting in a Wild Wing Cafe the night of the election when Obama was elected. And I had not been like super active in politics before that, but I just remember that like excitement being like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have a black man as president. Like this is like sitting with my graduate school friends because I was here for graduate school, and the excitement, I feel that same energy here. And overnight, it like the game changed. And Orange Man's fumbling the ball. He doesn't know what to say. He's pissing off people. The more he talks, the better we're probably off right now. So super excited. I will say, just like selfishly, my campaign wise, like Kamala being on the ticket and Waltz as well is a huge help to my campaign. I think there was a lot of just worry about, Biden being able to pull through, but this change is huge. It's reinvigorated people. But Tammy, you're right. We're the ones that go knock the doors. We're the ones making the phone calls. We're the ones going to community meetings. And that's why I'm super proud to be a delegate. I'll be in Chicago next week. And yes, my first DNC convention. I'm so excited. But why I'm so proud to go up there, because listen, I'm talking to the people in my community. I know what their concerns are. And Francie, when you're elected for a few years, you'll have knocked thousands of doors like I have.
Really?
So I feel like I know my people, and so I get to represent them well. And I think for those listening, go knock doors, text, call. Postcards are nice, but we need to get out and talk to people face to face.
Yeah. The excitement. So Heather, stay put. I'm gonna go back to you. This national, Heather and I are both delegates to Chicago next week. So listen, I am speechless right now because in 2019 I started on the Kamala train because after 2016 I said I was going to find women candidates. Had nothing to do with this SCDWC, but I was going to find women candidates and support them. I have very few dollars, very few coins, but that was going to be my mission. Was I would find a woman, a Democratic woman. Let me be clear. I would find a Democratic woman, and I would give Lynn what little resources I had to that. And so, during that time, 2019, we had Elizabeth Warren, we had Amy Klobuchar, we had Madam VP, we had a lot of Democratic women step up, and I chose Kamala. Harris. And then she dropped out, and I went with Joe, the Joe we know. I went with President Joe Biden. But in 2019, this excitement that started, the attacks on her became so vitriolic. And it was just like she could not win. It was the stuff that would come out, and it was like we could never breathe. That's how it felt like. It was one thing after the next. And then a few weeks ago, President Joe Biden said he would not run for re-election. He gave his support to his VP, said it was the first and best decision he made. This fast forward, we are here now, $310 million raised later. Started off with a Zoom call on that very Sunday where all of this came out, and all of this excitement about Madam VP. And now our VP candidate, Tim Walz, which he's a teacher, you know. So there you go. I'm all aboard. I like Pete Buttigieg because of Chasten, being a teacher / bartender. It was like somebody who can understand what regular people deal with. So I was very excited. And I was hoping she chose Waltz. No, I know a lot of people didn't know who he was, but I had started following him during the Olympics. Like, because he had so many Olympians in the. So I had started following him on social media around this time. And I'm like, this man is amazing. Just listening to the things that had happened in this state. So I just want to talk about this shift, this seismic shift in the country right now. Donald Trump is mad because they got what they want. They got rid of Joe Biden. And it's just, we have this shift. So if you could, from your perspective, just share this shift in the national campaign. You've already talked about how it was going to trickle down. I don't like using that term, to local races, but absolutely it matters to have that galvanize the local races. But these crowds that are showing up and everything else, it definitely is helping our candidates on the ground. So Heather, I'm going to go with you, and then I'm going to go with Francie, and then I'm going to go back to Tammy.
Yes, so definitely the excitement is palpable. I mean, I was at that Georgetown event and it was like electric in there. I'm still like feeling it from Sunday night when I was there. But we can't let our foot off the gas. My fear is that, and I'm gonna put it out there because we're gonna just dispel it and keep working hard, but with Kamala now being our pick, we're now picking up the votes we should have already had because they were discouraged and not feeling it. And so I feel like we're getting back to a neutral ground, and we got to keep pushing. I think we can definitely do it. We're going to do it, but we can't put our foot off the gas. We can't take anything for granted. And so that's my biggest fear. We can't let off the gas. But yes, back to, the local candidates. I mean, I'm hearing it out in the doors too. I mean, people are excited about her, so it's great for everybody.
Thank you. Okay, Francie, what do you think?
So everything that Heather just said, and when I would get in front of Democrats in my district, it was very methodical, but it was a sense of, almost defeat because the numbers weren't there based on who we could count on to get out and vote. But immediately, when you go in those same groups, whether it's a county party or some kind of training with the county party, there's like a buzz in the room. There is a lightness, there is hope. And I think hope is important for our young people. It is important for our young people to think that someone else could be president other than an old white man. And so I love Joe Biden. I think he's done a phenomenal job, but I am thrilled to pieces that he has decided to pass the mantle, because I was fearful of our ability to win his reelection. And so I am hoping that this new sense of engagement around politics definitely comes down to the state level. So that's my thought on it.
Thank you. Okay, Tammy, what are your thoughts?
My thought is
Spicy,
strategy.
real HU.
Yeah, the real, that's right. The big HU. My
That's right.
thought is strategy and momentum. You know, as Heather said, and I'm just going to piggyback off of her and Francie. As Heather said, it's important for the momentum to continue. And the only way we're going to keep that going is we have to continue being excited. We have to continue to keep talking. As I said, I have my only child, 30 years old, at the end of this month. And I keep talking with her. We keep having the conversations. She's having the conversations with her girlfriends. And she'll say, Mama said this, Mama said that. So y'all, we got to get out and vote, you know, but we've got to keep the momentum going. And then the other part of that is strategy. You know, once this the nomination and the whole thing with the convention and all of that, now what does that strategy look like moving forward? And what do we need to be thinking about on the local level about a strategy to keep that excitement going? Who's going to keep that excitement going? You know, so I think we have to continue to keep that in mind. And on the local level, I said we're going to have to really rally and get these people out to vote. We're going to really, and it's going to take walking the pavement and knocking on doors. I keep saying it. My big brother, the late South Carolina Representative David Mack, kept saying it. You've got to go talk to the people. Heather and Francie, y'all keep on knocking on them doors. Keep knocking on those doors. And that's what it's going to take. And I love it. Momentum. That's my word.
Yeah. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to watch the young people talk about it. I'm excited to see the crowds. Um, you know, it's nice. I can't wait to get to Chicago on Sunday and witness this thing in the air. It's going to be in Chicago too, which is nice because as a friend of mine told me last night, we got to get by the Obama presidential library. We got to look. It's not finished, but we got to see it. I was like, okay, look, you done put something else on the list to do. So I am excited, and of course, I'm excited that my girl is going to be the nominee. Um, it's just so interesting how quickly things change. Now, I want to open it up to questions from people on our Zoom. If anybody have any questions as we get ready to close out tonight for this inspirational stories. If there are no questions, I just want to talk. I mean, if you have a question, you can raise your hand and I'll see it. But I want to ask our candidates, particularly, how is it different being a woman running for office than being I mean, we don't know what men go through, but we know what we go through. So how is it different for women versus men? And we'll start with you, Francie.
Okay. So I believe that women get things done. I think that we are typically the matriarch of the family. Many of us are mothers. We are natural collaborators. We are natural mediators. And so I think, you know, and having been in leadership for a number of years and mentored young women, I believe women are fabulous leaders, which is probably part of the problem, is that many of the men are threatened by our capabilities. I hate to keep saying, you know, there are mean things, but there are wonderful men out there. But I think the men are threatened by our capabilities. And so, so for me running, you know, and I'm at a different place. I really thought I was retired and that, you know, I could give back to my community. And so, as I say to people, I don't really have anything to lose, but I have everything to give. 36 and a half years of federal service. I'm ready to get in there. And I think Heather said it best about no fear of favor. no one is ever going to call me and say, you should have voted this way, and hear me say, oh, well, they threatened my seniority, or, oh, the party doesn't want this. This is about, for me, representing the people, not about political gain and self-interest.
Nice. Very nice. Okay, Heather, how is it different?
Well, like to your point, I've never been a man before, but what I do know from experience running now my fourth campaign is raising money is still really tough. I mean, it is, I have to prove like where I grew up, who my dad was, where I went to school, how many kids do I have, how old are you, by the way? You know, through the list. So it's,
Why
they
don't
would
you
never
have
ask,
children? Where's
they,
your husband? How
they
does
would
he
never
feel
ask
about
a man that. They would never ask a man that.
right?
I get
Right.
asked that weekly, you know, at least one of those things or more. So just the immediate inclination to think that we are meant to be doing and act a certain way. And it is not to be calling them, asking them for money for $1,000. But I will say, over the course of my 4 campaigns, I have lost any kind of modesty when it comes to asking for money, because this is not about me. This is about South Carolina's kids. This is about the women and children in the state. So I've become completely immodest. I'll ask anybody for money at this point because this is not about me. But I would say that's the hardest part, is gaining that financial support, because Francie brought it up before, you know, it's going to cost my election over $200,000 a run. I'm a state house seat. You know, it is crazy to think about that. How much it costs to reach voters, and so you have to have resources.
Tammy, what do you see? You interview. You talk about my good friend as well. He had me on his show when I was the chair of the Berkeley Democrats. He'd come over. There was not a single stitch of Berkeley County in his district. He still came over. Our meetings were at 10 o'clock. He'd run over, do his thing for me, go do his radio show. And I just love Representative David Mack. We lost a good one, and we lost a statesman during that time period. But you do this all the time. You talk to candidates and politicians and elected officials all the time. What do you see are some of the challenges that women face versus men?
Being a woman.
Back.
That part, being a woman, but you know, funding, and that's even in being as a small business owner, funding. That's the biggest thing, the challenge. And then not only that, I don't know if I'm going to take it another way. Women supporting other women. Sometimes some women can be threatening. They feel that that you are threatening to them, and they may not want to support you. And so that's another thing, you know, women jealousy. Oh, and I don't know if you've experienced that or not, but some women may say, well, I don't want them to get farther than I did. If she's a senator, then I don't want her to, you know, those types of things. But I'm hearing more about funding and about getting the support, as we said, from men. Because men think that we are not supposed to be leaders. As Francie said, we are leaders, always have been. I think, you know, I hate to say this, but, you know, the rumor was, and you all can deny or confirm, when President Reagan was not doing his best, who was running the White House? They said Nancy. You know, so look at Roosevelt. Roosevelt. I mean, come on now. We can go down the list and say who's been running the country. And I think for us, for women, as I've been listening to, you know, to some politicians and having the opportunity to interview some other women, as well as listen, you know, on David's show with him, it's been funding, it's been the support, and just making, you know, seeing that people can get out there and saying this person can do this, and the belief that you can do it. because
Mhm.
Francie, you are going to be the next senator. Heather, you are going to be that back in, back there in the House. And so I think it's the belief. You have to have people behind you believing that you are that person, that you can do this. And so those are some of the things that I've heard.
Okay. As a former candidate myself, definitely the money. Heather and I both ran in 2020. We had this discussion because we both had I have two children. My two children at the time were in high school. I was not putting them on my campaign page because I felt like they needed privacy, right? So Heather and I had this conversation. Heather didn't put her dog. Heather, did you put your dog? I can't remember back then if you had your dog on your website.
I did not, but I do now.
Yeah, you have your dog now. So we
Yeah.
had a conversation literally on a Women Wednesday Zoom. And I said, I got the conversation of why are you out there? We talked about that. Why are you out there alone? And you know, and she was like, I'm not doing the obligatory dog, picture. And I was like, I was not putting my kids up there. It was like you didn't do that. If you were a woman, you were running, you had to have your man, your children, your dog. It was just like it had to be done. And both of us said, no, we're not doing it that way. And so it was interesting to me because when I was campaigning, a guy came up. I did a fish fry in Florence, South Carolina. My dad was out there frying the fish for me now. And this guy comes up and he says to me, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you married? And I'm like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not married? It's a thing that no one has ever said to Tim Scott or Lindsey Graham, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you married? So it is a thing with women. Who's taking care of your children while you're out here? You know, um, it's a thing it's still a thing in 2024 when women have to answer these types of questions all the time. It's that it's definitely the money. Well, can you prove you can win? And if we do get the donations, they're usually smaller. It's a whole and if people don't like you, women have to. We saw that with Hillary Clinton. Women have to be liked. And I always tell people, we're not going to dinner together. We're passing policy. What difference does it make? Women have to be likable, and we have to smile, and we have to be a certain size, and we have to do all. It's exhausting. And people then turn around and say, "Well, why don't you run again?" Because it's exhausting, and you have to do all of these things. I'm glad that Heather did it again, um, but it really is. It takes a toll on you when you just want to talk about policy and what's wrong, and people want to ask you about your hair, or your dog, or your kids, or all of these things. And so that's one of the reasons why I have made it my duty to always find a woman candidate to support in every single election with either my little money or canvas time, because we've got to change the notion between women and men. Women have to have think pieces, by the way, when they get ready to run, and men can just get up and say it, and it's true. They speak it, and it exists because he said it. But women have to prove it. And so, to all the women on this call, and to all the women listening out there, um, we need you to run, because if nothing else, we've got to get people in the notion of seeing women in leadership. And I'm going to say here what I said in 2008 when people were like, racism is dead. We got a black president. So people will say, sexism is dead. We have a female president. No, females make up 51% of the population. So if it was dead, you owe me at least 40 more women presidents. You owe me, if African Americans make up 13% of the population, you owe me at least 4 more presidents, African American presidents. If Hispanic Americans make up 30%, they haven't even been represented. So it's not dead. It's not DEI. It's our turn. It's time to see people in positions that look like America, who represent America, and to believe that there are not structures and things in place that prevent that from happening means that you're the beneficiary because you don't even see it. So final comments from all of our candidates and our panelists at this time. And we can, whoever wants to jump in first can jump in first. Tammy.
I just want to say kudos, Melissa. You are an amazing and phenomenal woman. When we had the opportunity to meet, I mean, I was like, okay, go ahead, girl. You know, that girl power. And so and that's for you, Francie and Heather, and all the women here, the beautiful women that are on this call. I just want to say thank you again for what you're doing. Continue to do it. We have to rally together. We have to stick together. And so if there's anything that I can do, all you have to do is call either of you. And I'd like to make sure that I know how, as we said, funding is always something. I mean, it may not be much, but it'd be a little church money. And, and be able to send that to you all, but have fun in Chicago and do your thing. I mean, I'm gonna be looking. I know who's there, because even one of my dear friends, William S. Robinson, Bill Robinson from Chirac County, he's gonna be there as well. So, not Chirac. Lord, what am I saying? Not Chirac. Camden. What is that county? Camden. Well, anyway,
Kershaw.
Kershaw. He's
Yes.
going to be there. So tell my brother Bill I said hello. But again, ladies, been an honor to be on this panel with some phenomenal women, and I thank you. I thank you for all of your service and what you're doing, and may God continue to bless you. And I know that you all gonna win this. You got this.
Right.
You got this. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. Heather?
Melissa, always fun hanging out with you. And Tammy, so good to meet you, and Francie as well. Just it gives me it's good to be in good company like this, kind of re-energizes me that we're on the right path. But my final word is that everyone has a place in this. You know, for me it was running for office. For others it might be you can write big checks, or maybe you like to go walk and talk to people at their front doors, or maybe I have someone organizing precinct parties for me. So everyone has a place in this system, because whether you go and you turn your light on, you're in politics. You know, people decide those rates. People deciding whether to build a gas plant that's going to increase your electricity prices. So we're all involved. We're all in politics, and everyone has a place in it, whether it's running for office or, like I said, knocking doors or whatever that might be, working at the party, helping do data entry. You know, there's so much work to be done.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Francie.
So I will just thank you for putting this together. Much like Heather said, if I knock 5 doors and no one's there, all it takes is one voter who appreciates the fact that we are running. And so that energizes me and gives me the spirit to knock another 25 doors. So the emotional support, the encouragement, and the appreciation, that has been overwhelming. But I will give a shout out to Heather. I am on a nonprofit board with her, and I have watched what she has done and been a supporter of hers. And so for someone who's significantly older than her, she showed me the path. And so my challenge to every woman on this call is, you know, we cannot do this alone. We have got to grow new female leaders that come behind us, and we've got to help them financially and train them and teach them how to do this work so that we do have good representation at the State House. So again, but thank you. And you know, Tammy, it was lovely meeting you. I'm not sure we've ever met before, but love to meet you.
I just want to end this. Thank you, ladies, so much for your time, your expertise. I always enjoy these. I always enjoy talking to you. There are quite a few on the virtual who did not want to ask a question, which is fine. But I want to say thank you guys, because every time a woman steps up to run, you know, they put one more shatter in the ceiling. and it's just about broken. So you guys be encouraged with what you're doing. Thank you, Tammy, again for all that you do, for you championing our causes all the time in a different way, because it really does take all of us doing all of our things to get people elected. There's always in this party what's effective, what works, what. Yes, we have to knock doors, we have to canvas, we have to reach out through digital media, we have to do everything that we possibly can to meet our voters, because our voters are hard to get at sometimes. So no matter what you do, it is important. No matter if you only have 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, it is important to do what you do, even if it's just taking your family to the polls. I mean, I went to the polls with my dad growing up. He went to vote after work. He made it a thing, and he would take me with him all the time. I didn't know what was going on, but I remember going to the polls with him and him voting. My government teacher registered me to vote when I was 18 by giving extra credit, and I was like, I can't because I have a summer birthday. And that's when I learned the 30-day rule. You can register 30 days before your birthday, and if it's the election that year and you're turning 18 prior to, you can register for the primary. So that was not the rule at the time, but at the time you could register 30. I could get my extra credit. I registered May 3rd. So, every little thing we do, we don't know, but feeding into it, it matters. And you guys matter for stepping up. Don't ever lose your voices. Thank you, everybody who's on. And until the next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.